Good evening, everybody. I would like to call to order the Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission meeting for Thursday, September 22nd, 2022. Dee, will you call us to order?
Marlene Newton. Doug Bruce.
Here.
Daniel Swagel.
Here.
Sam DeSaller.
Here.
Matthew Seddon. John Saunders.
Here.
Elizabeth Mitchell.
She's here. I'm making her co-host.
Here. I'm here. Okay. Allison Chopra.
Here.
Bernard Cross.
Here.
Duncan Campbell. Eric Ritchie. Ernesto Castaneda. Chris Sturbaugh.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Dee. So let's move on to approval of the minutes from our September 8th meeting. I need a motion.
So moved.
All right. Thank you. Dee, would you take the roll call?
Okay, Doug Bruce.
Abstain.
Daniel Slagle.
Yes.
Did I see Sam walk in?
Yes.
John Saunders.
Yes.
Run in.
Elizabeth Mitchell.
Yes.
Allison Chopra.
Abstain.
Bernard Cross.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Great. Thanks, Dee. All right. Let's move over to the COAs. Commission review will be COA 22-72. Gloria?
So today we are revisiting COA 22-72, in which the Kiln Collective is resubmitting COA 20-13 for restoration and vertical expansion. The COA application requests for the renewal of COA 20-13, which expired this year. There is additional clarification. So we saw this project 2 weeks ago for the people who weren't here. There is additional clarification that the project will be done in 2 phases. The first phase of the project calls for the rehabilitation of the first floor with alterations that open windows in the structure, as well as provide the core structure for the additional stories to come later. The petitioners have provided renderings. And the second phase, which may or may not take place within the next 2 years, calls for the construction of additional floors according to the submitted plans. So yes, staff recommends the approval of COA 22-71 to be completed in 2 phases. Here is some additional information. So I included the information from the last meeting and from what was submitted later on. This is the location on the north corner of the Showers Brothers complex, and some imagery of the building as it is now. This is what was originally submitted. I'm going to shrink this. Okay. And this is additional clarification. The proposed redevelopment will occur in 2 phases. The renovation of the existing historic structure, the creation of a circulation space between the 2 existing buildings, and the restoration of the existing brick masonry. A new entrance of the eastern alley will allow accessible access to the building. New openings will be created in the powerhouse on the north side of the building. The potential addition of 2 stories above the existing structure as previously submitted. So that would be the second phase. These are the renderings that were newly submitted of how the first phase would look like. So basically what the Kiln Collective is petitioning is for the restoration and rehab of the first floor with some alterations to the walls, with the potential of adding the additional floors later on, either in the next 2 years or through a future resubmittal.
Okay, thank you, Gloria. Does the petitioner have anything to add? Hi, Duncan.
Not much, other than I remember some of you from when we went through this process before. For those who weren't here last week, it might be worth just noting why. Obviously, we had some.
Could you state your name for the record?
Oh, yes, Mike Trotsky.
Thank you. Sorry.
Noting that why we're doing this, right? We obviously had some challenges with cost overruns through the pandemic. We ended up, when we started this project, at the beginning, literally the very beginning, we were kind of part of the spring of 2020, and obviously things didn't work out, and so we decided to take it in these 2 phases in order to help mitigate those concerns.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to questions. Daniel?
No, I didn't say anything from last time.
Okay. Bernard? Doug?
No questions.
Allison?
It has nothing to do with whether or not I'll approve this, but what is the Kiln Collective?
The Kiln Collective is a group of entrepreneurs here that are going to own or occupy the building. So it's myself and Brad.
Well, I take that back, but
And the builders, which is Bailey and Weiler, and Sean Urton and Bob Costello.
so it's basically a group of people who want to have offices in that space. That makes sense.
And a coffee
And-
shop.
Oh, well,
So
yeah.
the idea is to put some on the far end
Okay.
with Bob, which is something we really wanted around the middle as well.
Right. Okay.
And if I can add, which, you know, we originally, when we put this out to market, we did it through an RFP process, and we received a lot of responses back, but this was the group we chose in part because of their capabilities, in part because of their willingness to be owner-occupiers, and also in part because of their local
Right.
investment
Absolutely.
credentials. And so there were groups that were looking at it from God knows where, and we really thought it was important to have a local investment group if we could do that.
Absolutely. Would you like to state your name for the record? I
Alex
know
Crowley,
you
Director of Economics, City of Development.
Thanks, Alan.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. Sam?
I have a couple of questions. I was wondering if the petitioner could describe, Gloria, would you go to the shot of, well, any of the new renderings? Could describe what that little box is that pops up a little bit above the top of the building, what it is, what the materials are?
Sure. Brad Whistler, Kiln Collector, that's just a railing, so we intend to put some greenery, some plants up on the roof in the meantime before we construct on the second floor, so we'll need to have some roof access there. That's just a simple metal railing just for safety.
So it's a transparency railing, all right. And then would
It's
you?
probably a little more prominent in the rendering than it would be in real life.
Yeah, I just didn't know what it was gonna be, because in some of the renderings, it looks like especially the southwest one, which is that one, it looks solid, because you can't see the clouds through it, that sort of thing.
Just a safety railing.
No, I hear that. And if you would go to the northeast new rendering, the new one, there we go. So I have a couple questions. One, there's a little wooden box that's sort of sitting in the first 2 bays off to the left. What's that? And
That is a cooler unit, so that end unit is where the coffee shop will be. And so they need to have a big walk-in refrigerator, and that's the unit that provides the cooling to that refrigerator for the coffee shop.
all right, that does not show up on the future version of it. If you look at the from Alley and 11th Street Northeast rendering.
I believe it's on the inside of the completed rendering.
So does that stay for phase 2?
Yeah, the cooling unit will stay, and the idea would be eventually we would add the back that includes stairs to be able to get to the other floors, and then that would become enclosed. It's there in that rendering, it's just,
It looks more like it reads as a fence in the previous rendering, because there's no roof visible, and that's what I assumed it was the last time around.
it is an addition that comes out the back.
And then there's also if you look at the northeast, there's a brick addition that abuts the fence, those 2 bays that are forward. and they're shown more as wood in the new version. Is that going to be replaced with brick in phase 2 to match what, do you see what I'm talking about here? If you go to the old one versus the new one, it's hard to do. So if you look at the lower right rendering, and you look at the little graphic, and you go right below the little graphic, and then you go to the new version, if you go to the new version,
And that's not brick.
Oh,
that's all wood. So what I'm asking is, does that go to brick in version 2?
that is a good question. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
All
I
right.
think that, I don't think our intention would be to change it. And I'm not sure why the rendering shows it as wood in this one and brick in the other. I think that could just be because in the initial rendering, it needed, it had more of a facade that was visible there, and so we wanted to keep it more consistent with the brick. And maybe it just wasn't necessary in the one-story version. I honestly have to go check with the architect and get a definitive answer on that. But I don't think there's a a really important reason why that's different. I think it may just be on the other side of the rendering. We haven't had a discussion about that in particular, so.
Gotcha, thank you. Gloria, do you have a plan from the original submission?
Let me check if it's not here, it should be. This is the only plan that I added. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's just a reference thing.
It's not letting me zoom in, which is frustrating. Let me check the packet though, which I
Yeah,
have
I've got the packet,
right
that's,
here.
I'm not seeing it in the packet. So page 48 in the packet is the only plan I've got, and that's got a. And is that the original? That's the new plan, right?
No, I think that's
No, this is the original.
That's the original plan?
Yeah,
Yes.
because it's got the stairwell in there.
Okay, so there's a retaining wall and then the cooling unit. So if you go back to the northwest.
Do you want the
The-
new
the-
northwest or
the
the
new,
old?
the new northwest. So there's, well, the new, okay.
Northwest or northeast?
Sorry, my bad, northeast.
Okay.
Okay,
Compared to this slide.
okay. All right, I've got no further questions, thank you.
All right, thanks, Sam. Elizabeth, do you have any questions?
Yes, leave it right here. That's the cooling system, and then what else is back there? What's in the middle, and then what's on the right?
So the little thing that's a little shorter on the right, that's for the cooling system.
That's the cooling system.
Yes, and then the darker colored section that is at the same roof height is really just to connect the two buildings. Right now, it's just an open breezeway that goes through there, and we need to have some enclosure there so that you can move between the buildings, so that you can, eventually that would house the stairway and elevator shaft that would go up to the additional stories if we proceed with phase 2. But right now, it's just common area and some mechanical in there.
Each of the 5 bays in the building as it stands are completely isolated from one another. So there's no in the interior space, there's no connection between the bays. 2 of the bays actually have a door between them, but you can't move through them in any way. So there's a little hallway thing, I don't know if you can see me, but there's a back picture and the old picture now. A little wood, terrifying little hallway space that you can go out and kind of walk down in between them that's falling in. This is basically a replacement for that to allow you to be able to move so that we can have some common space, like we're going to have some common restrooms in the back, that are cut into one of the units that people can walk through and use throughout the entire building.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. Chris, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. And Duncan, do you have any questions?
So bring me up to speed a little. Are we looking at both phases for approval here? The first renderings were already approved once.
Right.
Now we're coming back to approve it without the second and third floor?
Correct.
Yes,
But is it implicit that those will still be included in this approval, or is this just for what we're looking at here?
yeah, no, that's an excellent question. They came back for reapproval because their COA expired due to the passage of time. And so, yes, the COA would be for the entirety of the project, with a possibility, like more distinct possibility that it just stay on phase one, which would be the first floor.
So the project will be done 2 phases. This one will have
Proposed
right
phases.
away, and the second
One of
one.
which might not happen.
Correct.
So
Or at least not within the 2-year period before it expires again.
So why don't we just approve this, or consider this, and
But we
consider
would like to build the rest of it, it just sort of depends on the financial condition of what happens over the next few months.
I get it, but I thought you just said that it was likely that it would expire by the time you got around to doing
I'm
it.
saying it could expire, and we'd have to come back, that's another possibility.
So in the next year, both phases are planned to be completed.
Yeah, knock on wood and best case scenario.
Yeah.
I had hoped, I
That's
had
not a
hoped,
real
I had hoped to
strong
already,
yes.
I mean, yeah, I had
That's
hoped
what
to
we're all
already,
for, yeah.
I had hoped to already have this building built.
No, I
and
get
finished in
that,
it
but we're past
right now.
that. We're past that.
I hope that we are, and I hope that, you know, both financing and availability of tenants and everything will snap back to a point that we complete the project as originally intended. I think there is need for additional graduation space coming out of the mill, but obviously, you know, conditions are different now, and it does make me a little hesitant to guarantee to anyone what's gonna happen over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think the most definitive way to say it is if we can get tenants to sign leases for those second floor space, we will commence immediately.
All right, any more questions?
Well, pondering the ramifications of that. So if you don't get it built by the time the C of A expires, then the entire C of A is expired, including the phase one,
But
if
they'll
it's
have a
not
permit by then.
completed. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we're in position now to fill up the building and do phase one currently. So I don't anticipate that won't be completed within the timeframe. I just am not comfortable saying that we are, you know, 100% confident that the entire project will be, but I would hate to, you know, not be able to move forward on that as soon as possible.
Right.
So that's kind of the ideal situation here, at least for us, would be to have that flexibility,
So-
to do what we really wanted to do originally, but also get started on this right now.
So you understand that if tenants come in and want alterations to the space, you'll have to come back for another C of A.
Certainly.
Okay.
Very good.
Gotcha.
Alice? Okay, so let's move on to comments. Daniel?
I guess some of this was, and Sam, I don't mean if I'm jumping ahead with, but some of the stuff you were asking about with the brick versus the wood, would that have an impact on this? Like on us approving this, since it's,
I think that's up to us.
oh, okay, okay. I wasn't sure, so
I think it's up to the code.
Is that not correct, what we should be considering? What is the standard of the review for this?
In what sense?
The materials being used on the outside? Is
On
that
the-
what you're referring to? You know, right
Right,
now,
I
we're
mean,
not seeing the
what is our
brick.
standard for review? I mean, what's,
Same as any other project.
okay.
So, they did submit plans for the entire project. So the entire project means the, 4 stories that they would like to have at the end. There is some inconsistency with the rendering, as with this back part of the rendering, as Sam pointed out. That's something that could be, that the HPC could address if they wanted to, making like a caveat or condition that the back of the building be done as per the original drawings. Or table it and ask for more clarification. All of you have various options, but it is up to the HPC to make that determination.
Can someone just tell me what the standard of review is? That would be really helpful. Does that make sense? I mean, what are we using to measure whether or not we should pass this? I know it's in the code.
Hi, this is Chris Wheeler with City Legal. I don't know if anybody can hear me.
Oh, we can hear
Testing
you.
1,
Thank
2,
you.
3.
Thank you, Chris.
Wonderful. So, Allison, I know what you're saying, but there isn't anything in the code that actually spells out what a quote-unquote standard of review would be from a legal sense.
Mm-hmm.
You just simply get to approve or deny or modify. But there isn't any criteria like what do they have to meet in order for this board to approve or deny. It's up to the board just to decide whether or not to approve or deny.
Allison, are you asking sort of by what, I mean, are you within the context of the historic district, you're saying, like what?
Right.
So
I know it's part of a
there's
historic district.
So I think, is the question, does the renovation of the building and the materials and everything being used comply with the aesthetic and the standards of what we have in mind for the Showers Brothers district, as well as possibly the Trades district? And I think the answer has been that the HPC has said yes, but is that helpful?
Yes. Yeah, and I'll jump on just a little bit more, Allison.
Because you have to know what you're using, like what you're measuring.
And HPC disagree with me, but I know this has been through not a number of times, but a couple of times, so I think that's standards. It seems like you guys have agreed that this fits within the context of the historic district.
Historically, yeah.
The second iteration went through a number of permutations and came back to the HPC on multiple occasions, and it was massaged greatly.
Okay.
And I'm happy to address some of that in commentary.
Okay.
But I mean, in big picture, it's compatible but differentiated.
Okay. So does it fit within the district is the question.
That was my interpretation of the question.
Yes, and I think that
I
you
all
answered that. Thank you.
But it seemed like.
My question is answered as well as it can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Bernard, do you have any comments?
No.
Doug, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I was on a part of that when it came before us originally. I'm still on board that I'm just glad to see something happen here. This building we knew was going to take a lot of changes compared to maybe most buildings because its use was completely incompatible with anything that would be occupied by people. The drying of lumber is one thing, but this is going to require some changes to make it compatible. But Duncan and Sam both have brought up some really interesting points. I could see an approval based on meeting like the initial or the other renderings for the phase 2 down the road with the brick on the back, because I hadn't really caught that either. And I think that's something that has to be addressed somehow today if this is going to be approved. And I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what Duncan's going to say about the second floor and the timelines, because I could see what the Kiln Collective is doing is that, look, if there's a chance, as opposed to coming back here, are we happy with this as a single story? And my thought would be do we need more information to have it as this phase 1? Because there's a lot of information what it's going to be for phase 2. We've already really approved that once before. So if it doesn't change drastically from that, I don't see why we wouldn't approve that again. But pulling out phase 1 and the idea that it may never have phase 2, does it change it enough that we have some different ideas and different comments? I, like Sam, I kind of figured that was a railing. I honestly thought you were gonna say you were building a stair up to the roof and you were gonna use the roof patio for something. I also know that if you've got rooftop equipment, I mean, we don't see any here, but rooftop equipment would show, and of course, obviously, then there's railings needed if it's closer than 10 foot to an edge for safety. But we don't know anything about that railing that's now popped up, again, and it may be more visible in the rendering than it is in real life, but is it wood, is it metal, is it gonna have things between it, is it gonna be just completely open, is it gonna be 3 feet high, is it gonna be 5 feet high when the time comes down the road, and we don't have that information in front of us. So I could see us approving it with some conditions, but it may be a bunch of conditions. I don't know. I'm not dissatisfied with it because I want to see something happen to it before it gets to a point where nothing can happen to it. So that's my comments for now.
Thanks, Lynn. Allison, comments?
No comment.
Sam?
So I in large part approve of this. That said, I have concerns. If you decide to put any rooftop equipment, like Bruce referred to, if you decide that you need a stair tower on the top, that's not shown. That's something you're going to have to come back to the HPC for approval on. Because this building sits down, and you're looking down on it from basically all over, all the streets to the north and to the, okay, I'm directionally challenged here from into the west. No, east, directionally challenged. So anything that happens on the roof is going to be very visible. That's thing one, and so that's the least of my concerns. The western facade and the northern facade are exactly as shown on phase 2, except the top gets chopped off. So got no issues with that. This facade, the eastern facade, we gave you guys a really hard time about it the last go-round. That's basically what we made you come back for time and time again, because this is your back of house. And the first time it came before us, it was a mess. And iteration after iteration, it got cleaner and cleaner until we got to what you presented and what finally got approved. I feel like this one has done some backsliding, and I am concerned that I want to see the fencing that was originally around the cooler, because coolers aren't pretty. And I think that if you treat it more as a volume as opposed to like a little plop sculpture, then it's going to be cleaner. And then the other big concern I have is you've got fenestration in phase 1, and you don't have fenestration in phase 2 on that western facade. And people are, unless, I'm concerned that if you come back and say, oh, we're going to do this instead, does that use change from phase 1 to phase 2? Because we haven't seen, I don't see a phase 1 plan. I mean, we have no purview over what happens on the inside of the building, so I don't know. But what we do have purview over is what we can see from the street. And phase 1 on the east, in that little middle bit, just south of the cooler, you've got glass, and it's like, it's got a different plan, and it's different materials than what's shown in phase 2. And so that makes me very, very leery. I'll stop with that.
Thank you, Sam. Elizabeth, do you have any comments?
No comments.
Chris, comments?
Yeah, I think the big idea is compatibility, and I think this passes, and it may be more compatible than the phase 2. And this back of building, this is an addition onto that structure. I don't know if they're gonna be dumpsters back here, but it's not really bothering me. I think we could get a few more details or even have a staff review on some of this, but I like this phase, and I think it's a good thing to see happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Duncan?
Well, aside from the problem I already addressed, it seems like if it's truly phase one and I believe it is, and that there's an honest attempt to, or intent to put phase two in the way we originally approved it, that this back of house part that we see ought to match what we saw in the original approval and be built on subsequently in phase two, not be different from it, which I think is the point that Sam has rather eloquently pointed out. So now this is so substantively, this is a change in the part two that was approved, or in the original C of A that was approved. So if you go to do your second phase, and if we've approved this, and you go to do your second phase, you're gonna have to redo that.
Right.
Why would you wanna do that? If money is an issue at all, and it always is.
Well, one challenge is that the brick was higher up on that entire area, especially on the left-hand side of this picture, right?
Yeah.
That we can't do that.
Because it went up.
Can't put 2 stories of brick on that.
We can't put 2
section in
stories
phase one, right?
of brick in that section, and I think that was the driving decision, was that,
Okay.
like, we're gonna have to treat that differently when we build up.
So this basically, in phase two, would get completely covered up with brick.
Yes.
I mean, it
Thanks.
actually is shorter than on the right-hand side of it, it's slightly shorter, but you
Yeah.
could like take that pattern. The idea with the pattern was to make it the same height as the doors, or feel the same height as the doors as you go across.
Yeah.
In this iteration, you don't have enough height to really do that, so you could put something like that, but it wouldn't work. That wouldn't solve that either. I mean, you could put brick on there instead, but it would be shorter than the height of the doors on the right-hand side, and definitely on the left, where you're not putting 2 stories up, where we were trying to make it the height of the left-hand, mirror that feeling. If you go back to the original, you see more what I'm talking about, but like the heights don't line up here to
Yeah.
make that work
Yeah.
in the current situation. So I think that was the motivation, is just to put something there for now.
I think the other issue too is that this 3-story rendering, you've got natural light coming in from the 2nd and 3rd stories on that. There's a stairway going up through there and light coming in. If you don't have the stairway in phase one, you don't have those extra stories, so there's no natural light coming into that. So I think that was another motivator, was to add some windows there so that in phase one, it's not just, dark box in the back. We actually still have some way for light to get in there.
So you plan on pulling those windows in phase two if you're putting in the stair?
I think we could, I mean, if
We would have to,
if
or I
we're
would
gonna do the brick,
here.
we would have to, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think we would have to do that in order to move forward with that phase, or return here with a different plan.
I guess the
is what I
question,
would think.
I guess the issue for me is, I mean, if you wanna do it that way, I'm assuming that you're genuine about wanting to do phase two, who wouldn't be? But if you wanna do it that way, what it means for us is that we have to approve something that we're looking at here that we don't like very much. And so we don't wanna get stuck with it because you didn't get your funding to finish the project. And then forever, it's like, what happened to the back of the building? Well, the Preservation Commission missed it, or you ran out of, I don't know what you know what I mean? But we're stuck with an approval that now we can't undo. And so that's why I was suggesting that we do it, just approve phase one, and we address whatever the issues are at the back right now.
I don't have any comments. My fellow commissioners have done a pretty good job of this. I need a motion.
I'll move to approve.
So there's not gonna be any discussion about,
Well, I just made a motion. It's on the table, I guess. Do I have a second? Well, that's a problem.
Duncan?
I guess you know, I don't wanna misrepresent myself. I'm in earnest to get this done, just like Chris said. I wanna see it done badly. And so if there's this interim phase in the back of the building that seems apparently necessary because it's just not quite ready to be completed yet or built out yet because of the story issues and the cladding issues and the light issues that you mentioned, I can get comfortable with that, but I can't get comfortable with being stuck with it. If you don't, if the project doesn't proceed as planned. I mean, I would assume that the original approval would take, you know, would take hold and that the completed project would look like it was originally approved to look. And that would be the commitment I would expect from you. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're comfortable saying if, you know.
If phase two happens, it can look like
If
the
phase
original
two
design.
happens, it will look like the phase two renderings.
But
not-
I don't wanna, you know, I don't wanna, I want you to also be happy with this if we get stuck in it. I mean, I think that's important. Like the goal is not to, you know, sort of bait and switch. I mean, if that happens, I don't wanna, you know, live my life feeling guilty that this isn't what people, I mean, really, that this isn't what we want, right? So from that standpoint, I think getting this right is still worth considering, because that's really what from my perspective, that's what we're asking. We're asking like, hey, what if we got stuck here? How would you feel about that, right? And so I think all those comments are still valid with regard to that. But you know, I don't know what that means to make you be comfortable with this, right? I don't know exactly.
So, can I ask a quick question? So obviously, since I didn't get a second, I'm in the minority here. Could you all share with me what's wrong with this?
So, I could step in if that's all right. So the issue is that it's gonna be difficult to go from this to phase two. Because it doesn't match on this elevation. All the other elevations is fine. It's just this back of house, the outline of the plan is different, the fenestration is different, but the fenestration, for me, that's not really an issue, except if you say you're gonna put a stair there on phase two, and so that allays my concerns there. So what I was gonna say is, as long as phase one, the plan outline is the same, and I get a fence instead of a plot that is higher than the coolie, what are those things called? Cooler. The cooler in the back.
Walk-in cooler.
Sorry, the walk-in cooler. I'm not a restaurant person. Then I'm not really going to have so much of an issue with it. But do you see, like, because there's a different configuration on the ground floor, as I'm reading, because you've got bump outs that don't show in the phase one that are in the phase two, and I don't care that there's no brick there right now, but what you have on there has got to look good. I mean, it's because we're going to get stuck with it. So the only other piece of it was all of your window fenestration. I would size that such that you can rip it out and put it in phase two. And it looks a little randomy at the moment, so.
I still don't see what's wrong with phase one. Should it be all that is ever improved on this property? Because that's the question, right? I mean, they're saying phase one will look like this. If and when we get to phase two, this is what it's gonna look like. So as long as both of those are compatible with the historic district, which I think they are, I don't understand the hang-up.
Well, they are. Yeah. They are as an opinion. It's not a fact.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, but you use the we that we all like something, so that's my opinion.
So let me just clarify this for myself. We've already approved the completed structure.
Yes.
But it's expired.
Right. But the expectation is that if the structure is completed, it would look like what was approved pre-expiration.
That's the expectation.
Right.
Right.
So I really don't see the argument. If the ground floor is different, it means that the entire finished three-story structure is going to be different, and it would have to come back. Are we approving all 3 stories or just 1 story now for them to come back to get another approval for the additional 2 stories?
They would like to have both 1 and 3 stories approved
But
at this
that can't
point.
happen, based on the points brought out, because the ground floor would have to change significantly to fit into what the
No,
the
ground
completed
floor
building.
wouldn't change. They're gonna go ahead and prepare the ground floor for the second and third
Right, but when you
story.
build the other 2, you're gonna have to fill windows in and
Back,
and
No, we're
change
only
the back
talking
and all
about the
these
back of
things.
the building, where they're adding the walkway and the restrooms. Because that in the second phase is to become a stairwell, and it'll be enclosed with all brick. That's what the second phase was.
So, my understanding on the previous occasion that we were gonna come back to look at the ground floor only. My expectation was that when the additional 2 stories were gonna be put on, then they'd have to come back again. Maybe I misunderstood what happened in the last meeting, but that was what I thought was gonna happen, and the argument being is that we want to ensure that what we're approving now, the ground floor, if it stays as the ground floor, then we'd have something that we're satisfied with.
I think
I understand, like, that's a huge, that's a risk for someone building, right? Like, to say, yeah, we're okay with phase 1, but the real plan is to have a 3-story building and then, like, get blocked, you know, when they come back. So, like, you wouldn't want to invest in this property if you didn't know what its capacity could be.
Right.
Does that make sense? I mean, you wouldn't, so that's why they're here trying to get both, so that they don't improve this first floor and then come back in 4 years and have a different administration, different committee members and people that don't remember, and then saying, no, we don't like that, you can't do a 2nd and 3rd floor. That's a big difference in their investment. So to me, it makes sense to do both.
Well, I have a fair amount of experience in buildings built in multiple phases. In certain parts of the world, that's how it's done from a cost perspective. And it usually is that the only allowance that's given for the ground floor to be different is maybe access points and so on. This to me, and somebody can correct me, seems significant. Is that too strong a word to use? Significant?
Would you elaborate? I don't understand what you're
terms
saying.
of a departure from, well, let me rephrase it. I think it's a significant departure from what my expectation was in the last meeting. I literally expected to see a 3-story building, take the 2 stories off the top, and the ground floor would be the exact same footprint, minus the part that was being shown above the roof line. I remember there's an issue with that, and my understanding was that in the renderings that will be presented now, it would be brought down to be more aesthetically pleasing. That's what I expected, with enough detail for a lot of the other questions that are being asked today about, you know, height of railings and this and that, you know, just some dimensions being put in to clarify those issues. That was my expectation here. I know I'm hearing a lot of discussion happening that, to me, gives the impression that perhaps the requirement of the petitioners weren't met.
I've got a couple of responses to that. One, I totally agree. We have to be happy with what is happening on the ground floor as presented. I have some issues with that as yet. The other piece of that is, I anticipated them coming back with basically getting approval for the upper stories at this meeting. They basically are saying, we're gonna do it like if we can, we're gonna do it like it was approved before. That was my understanding from the last meeting. My concern then is to go from what has been presented to the phase 2 as previously approved. There's some discrepancies, especially in the plan, because there are some ins and outs that are shown on the previous submission for the high, the 3-story version, which are not shown in this rendering. So there's going to have to be some major reconfiguration of this ground floor to accommodate a multi-story addition. So it feels like it's problematic. If what I was trying to say before, and I don't know if I clarified, if I saw a fence, and if the plan, the exterior perimeter wall was in the same place as the original, I don't think I'd have any problems approving this, but it's not. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to see this drawing, to see what was going on back here, because this is as much visibility as the front facade, because the approach from downtown, in some ways, this is what you see more than the front door.
Correct.
So this has got to be pretty too.
So as background, to follow up on that, when we looked at these, the several configurations that they brought to us in the past when we've approved the 3-story addition, one of the big issues was that this building has facades on all sides. It's not just street facing. And so we were concerned that this back eastern side should be as compatible an effort as the front and not just be back of house. And so what we ended up with that consideration, was what you saw as approved with the brick relieved panels that imitate several showers buildings configurations, wall configurations throughout the district. And we liked that because that allowed all sides of the buildings to have a historic presentation, even though we understood it was new. Now that's gone. Okay, now we have a metal shed back here that is not addressing those issues. And so for me, that's what's making me what's making me hesitant about approving this if it remains that way, because it's not very good, to be blunt. Now, if it's just temporary and it's just an army barracks that's going to be there for the duration of the war and then it's all going to go away, fine. When I was in college, I went to class in army barracks, and IU had army barracks that were here for 50 years. So that's what we're trying to avoid. And so I don't know. Maybe it, in order to move on, it's like a commitment to come back if the second story iteration does not come to fruition. You make a commitment to come back here with an improved facade renovation on this to make it compatible in a way that we could live with.
That might be a question for legal, if we can actually do that.
Yeah.
And then I'd want to get down into, okay, what would we be looking for?
Something that's a brick facade, probably.
Right, and
I mean, in the simplest answer.
and what would happen if the petitioner doesn't satisfy that condition? We just knock stuff down. I mean, what would be the remedy?
Yeah, that's why I brought it up in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awkward.
So, I mean,
But we want it to move along. I think there's consensus that everybody wants to see it happen. And so I'm just trying to,
dare I ask, what's the petitioners, what's the timeline on this? Do you have architectural plans drawn up? Do you have?
We haven't completed detailed architectural for just the first floor, right? We haven't re-engaged to do all of that again. beyond doing a rendering, that again, I think our request was just chop off one floor, but it becomes a little bit more complicated than that, as you can see, when the facade reaches 2 floors, and you can't have that, and so this is what came out of that process, right? But yeah, I mean, obviously that's our intent before we begin development, is to finalize the set of plans.
And ultimately, we could sit here today and require that they put a brick facade on that configuration, but it would be with the knowledge that they're gonna have to tear it down in order to do the second floor, which would be a very expensive thing to require.
Yeah, I don't want to have to make them do that.
I don't either.
I think I could live with, a sort of army barracksy metal shed on the back if it were well designed and if it matched the configuration of phase 2, which would encourage them to do the phase 2 configuration because it would cost less to do on down the road.
But it makes them, we just go back to the design table and come back again. So,
I don't have a problem with that necessarily. I mean, it goes back to measuring 10 times so that you're sure when you cut, you get what you want.
So, and this is just a question for the group. I want to make sure I understand. It's Morton there on the east side of the building?
it's an alley.
It's an alley.
Which is higher,
Right.
because you're going downhill
Yeah.
there and you see all of it.
There we go, that's all.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
So,
What alley is
so you see, so
Yeah, if you could
you
orient
see
me.
the alley, and then Morton is
On the
other
what,
side of the other building.
Do you have a current condition photo from that direction?
These are the photos I have.
So we don't have one.
I'll get some Google Map action going on in a second.
So,
We don't do the second one. I mean, yeah, I don't.
So I don't know if I can make, it's Alex Crowley again, Director of Economic and Sustainable Development. And Chris, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
The other Chris.
It's Wheeler.
Wheeler.
Yeah.
Wheeler.
yeah, not you.
So Chris, can I and to the HPC, can I flow something out here? So there's a 2-year window out into the future, which is the COA for the multi-story building, right? The approval of the COA will expire for the multi-story, right? So that's sort of an existing 2-year window out there that may be able to be a trigger point for a moment. Bless you. If nothing has happened at that point, that's going to require additional action anyway, right? I think what's confusing here is that the phase 2 design has built-in features that are not compatible with the phase 1 approach. I think everybody understands that, and it's also just a little confusing, right? So, Chris Wheeler, my question to you would be, can we put a zoning commitment in, which is essentially some teeth on the requirement, to come back and revisit the back?
That's the east, and then it's all covered with
That
crowd,
would
and then
essentially
there's a beer.
require the developer to do one of 2 things, either fulfill on the multi-story design by that point, or come back as a requirement and revisit, with a better understanding of what the future looks like, revisit what that back area looks like with the possibility that they come and brick it, or whatever
I think we'd be comfortable if there were some specific requirements. Either we do phase 2 or we put brick facade on the back. We'd be comfortable with that. I don't think we can live with either we build phase 2 or we come back and get some new unknown requirement that some new board 2 years from now might come up with. That's not tenable. But I certainly, if it's either build 2 stories or make that brick, I think we're certainly comfortable with that.
Well,
As long as there's a
There
way
was
to
a
clearly
CU
write what that requirement is in a way that doesn't leave too much room for imagination.
yeah, and I mean, really for our purposes, that we would have to have at least a rendered version of that. at this point. So otherwise, you want a board 2 years out to guarantee that they'll be okay with it, but you're not gonna show us what it actually is. So that's not gonna work. So you'd have to go back to the drawing board, at least render a solution, and
I'd ask for more than render.
come back to have that approved.
Just to understand that it's an iteration that has a brick facade on the first floor. It would obviously be different, but the goals around that would be to mimic the sort of recessed pattern, even if the heights don't quite match, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, put that second story or third story version back up there on that side. Yeah, see the paneling? That's basically the sort of imitative treatment that we liked, that helped us approve this the way it was. So something like that.
What I don't wanna have you have to do is to rebuild everything.
Right.
Or anything. So what I would love to see is, whack it off, and if that like story and a half bit of brick, which doesn't make sense to build right now, if it's in that same position, see how it pops out like 2 or 3 feet, that taller portion from the little 2-bay lower portion. If that's in the same position, but yet you've got other stuff in place that matches what you're planning to do on the higher bit, I think I would be a lot more comfortable with that. You would be a lot more comfortable with that. You don't have to do the whole thing, and you don't have to do anything that doesn't make sense for the first story version, because that story and a half thing isn't going to work. But as long as you've got a stud wall in place, sized and positioned such that when it comes to build extra stories, you can just veneer it and you're done. So the thing that worries me about the current first story iteration is that it doesn't match what's going on plan-wise
At the first floor.
out the first floor. It's just like, and so you're gonna have to do some destruction, you're gonna have to put in new footers, you're gonna have to like pop it out if you're planning to do what was previously approved and what you're asking to be approved tonight for your future version. So, in some sense, I'm trying to save you some work.
I mean, I would say if it's closer to what it's gonna be, then.
And Sam, it looks to me, when you look at this rendering in the bottom left of the back,
Yes, sir.
what we're seeing on the proposal right now for the first floor is again all wood or all metal, and I could see the lower portions of brick here underneath the art there on the wall, on the higher stories there. I could see that being brick. I could see, like you said, in the footprint that this is being wood now and having windows in it, and I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Knowing that it could change
Other
down the
people may
road.
have issues with
But,
that.
well, yeah, but this story and a half part, I guess I'm just saying for me, and I agree with Chris in a way, I want to see something happen here. The story and a half part, I don't have any problem with that going away, because that works for me only really, that story and a half of brick, with the height, the increased height of the building. If it never happens, and that's the only spot maybe that's wood, you could still put windows in it. And if it never went down the road, you have no need for that story and a half of brick. Now, again, I could see the other two part. I like this better with the brick as we showed on the lower part, mimicking the bays of the building. But if that was wood but had windows there mimicking the bays, I could, and I guess what I'm trying to get to is that in the end, as you say, as both of you rightly bring up, there's not enough information for us to guarantee that if this first floor is done, and that's all that it is, that we've approved it in a manner that we would approve any other project as the first floor. Because the first floor right now that we're seeing today is different from this, than from just lopping this off. I think, as Renard said, this is different from that. I wasn't at the last meeting when that was discussed, but I could see where that would be a thought that you would have, but I also see how that doesn't work for you, because because this is going to be a people space and a connector. So I think if we had another rendering or a plan drawing showing us windows and the plan and what the plan would do to match up with what was approved, you'd see this board be all in on this. Maybe, because Duncan still doesn't like the wood where I want the brick, or where the brick is.
Well, it
Yeah.
isn't that, it's just that, I don't want to be stuck with a building that basically was approved for some other iteration because of a phasing requirement. And I totally get phasing. I redid the Johnson Creamery in 6 years. I get it, you know. We built out when tenants came in, period.
I had an office in there for 12 years.
Yeah, and things changed a lot. So I get it. I just trying to prevent driving by there in 5 years going, boy, I wish they built that second story, you know.
And just to bring Doug up to speed, what I said last week, and I still hold to that, is like, I don't need to see a rendering of like this quality, of this definition, but I want the information in that rendering to match the plan, to match what it is you guys are trying to do. Because the discrepancies between phase 1 and phase 2 in the current rendering, that's what I'm trying to address. I'm not saying you got to go back and model this whole thing and yada yada yada, but it's you got to pay attention to the the nuances.
Why don't we
You're
table
saying-
this and have them come back to our next meeting?
There might be a time issue.
So you're saying something a little more detailed than this?
No, I'm fine with this level of detail. I'm just saying that the
It's not the
information.
level of detail, it's the, for example, that fence, I mean, they don't line up with each other.
The COA 30 days expires tomorrow. The owners need to be in agreement to commit to an additional 30 days. Chris Wheeler, can you confirm if the owners and the HPC can extend this COA process 30 additional days with everybody's consent?
Chris, yeah.
Please say that one more time.
Yeah, so the 30 days since application expires tomorrow.
Right.
And a decision has to be made tonight. The decision could be approved, deny, or something in between, or extend. But I believe it can be extended with the consent of the owners, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, there has to be an agreement between the applicant and the commission for the extension of time. Otherwise, the commission has to act on this application either by approving it or denying it or doing nothing. If you do nothing, it's going to be approved. So you have to if you don't want it to be, if you do nothing, it's going to get approved in a few days. So you have to either approve it, deny it, or come to an agreement for an extension of time.
Thanks, Chris.
And if we deny it, how soon can they come back?
You know, because there's an oddity twice a year, because we meet the second and fourth Thursdays of the month, and some months have 5 weeks. There is an oddity, and the next meeting is October 13th. The next deadline is next week. So either extend or deny, it wouldn't make a difference, only this week. So anyways, in other weeks it would set them back a whole month. This time it would set them back till the next meeting.
Well, I'm good if we extend this to our next meeting and give them time to come back to us with changes that we've been talking about to the back of the building and with some new ideas.
Well, we need to get their agreement.
But we would need the agreement from the developers over there.
I'd also like to put in, I would be happy to meet with the petitioner in between if that would help. Expedite, and if I could trick other people into it, I would love to do that too, but.
So tricked. Did I miss a question? I'm sorry.
Are you amenable to us extending this so that you can do what we've asked.
I mean, the alternative is we've been denied, we're certainly.
Or you
Being
could call our
denied
bluff.
Being denied
See what
doesn't
they
mean you
do.
can't come back and start over.
It just
Call our
means
bluff,
they're
that's what I
It
would
just
do.
means it's delayed.
Does that cause any
That's
issues
what I was
with the
just,
rest of the process?
I was trying to make sure it doesn't throw our time.
We're running in parallel paths, so one of the things that's happening in parallel with the assumption that this was actually gonna pass was, we're anticipating, so there's the pressure of having a construction and the interior demolition started over the winter, right? So we were moving back from that. We're trying to land a close date following HPC approval, pre that moment when we need to, we want to see that interior construction work done. So it's good, that window's shrinking. I think we can still work it. I think to have a meeting with them so that the next meeting, there isn't confusion and it can be a little bit more predictable, then I think that we can drop that closing afterwards, or time it with a presumption maybe that they could happen and still hold to schedule. So that's just the timing.
As long as that was my only concern, is if it messed up something else in our process.
Yeah, well, that's what we did with the bank on Kirkwood recently to expedite. We had several meetings with
Yeah.
the design team to basically come to a
And I can't speak
agreement.
for Craig, who did the renewals availability, but, I'm sure we can work for that.
I'm sure we can.
And I think Sam brought up a good point. I don't think we expect to see the kind of rendering that the initial complete build-out had. But seeing a plan and something with some more things labeled at what it would be, and maybe a little more accuracy, I mean, on the sketch is fine. I mean, it doesn't, and again, I leave it up to Sam to say, hey, this would be something amenable to the group to bring back. And Renard as well, since he got roped into it.
Do we need a motion for
We
this?
need a motion.
I'll move to extend with the applicant's permission, the approval period for another 30 days.
Second.
Okay, Dee, would you do the roll call?
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Pam DeSaller,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
Allison Chopra,
Yes.
Bernard Cross.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys.
We'll see you all soon.
Get in touch with Gloria.
We'll get through this.
Yes.
I was thinking they should post.
All right. Let's move on to COA 22-73, 514 West Kirkwood Avenue.
Okay, first of all, is there a representative available for 514 West Kirkwood Avenue? If you are online, can you use the raise hand feature? Thank you. Excellent. Making a co-host. Okay, perfect. So the petitioner's Brawley property is asking to redesign the parking lot and garden at the back of 514 West Kirkwood Avenue, also known as the Parker Hawkins House Local Historic District, which is an outstanding building in the near West Side neighborhood. The proposed project improves the back of the property, adds vegetation, and provides a more organized and aesthetic design to the parking lot, and it does not impact the historic structure itself. Here's a photo of the back of the property as it is right now. And here is the aerial and via the proposed design, which would actually reduce the amount of parking, but organize it much better, allow for better paving to the building, and provide more green and garden space. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Gloria. Mr. Tim, you're with us? Do you have any additional comments for us?
Yes, I'm here, and no, I don't have any additional comments.
All right, great. So move to questions. Daniel, do you have any questions?
No.
Bernard, do you have any questions? Doug?
No questions.
Allison?
Curious if this needs to be approved based on the change in permeable surfaces at all? No? Okay, I was just asking.
Yeah.
No, that would not be our purview.
I was just curious
Yeah.
if they were gonna need to review that.
They will, but it meets it, I looked it up.
Okay, great,
Thanks.
thank you.
Sam, any questions?
I only have one question for the petitioner. Are you going to maintain the existing fences on both property lines? I mean, keep the existing ones?
Existing what?
Fences.
On both sides of the property line, I think on the back side, the northwest side, about half of that fence has already been replaced by the neighbor. And there's, we would like to, at some point, replace the fence on the south part of the west side, but that's not part of what we're looking at doing here.
Okay.
On that, what we're looking at doing here is just the parking area.
Gotcha, thank you.
Thank you. Duncan, any questions? Elizabeth, any questions? All right. Chris, any questions?
No questions.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Chris, do you have any questions?
No,
Great. I haven't got any questions for this. I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Move to approve.
Second.
C of A 2273.
Well, so much for comments.
Oh, with questions, that's right.
I love procedure.
Dee, go ahead and do the roll call.
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes.
Allison Chopra,
Yes.
Bernard Cross.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to COA. Thank you for coming. Let's move on to COA 22-74, 115 North College Avenue. And I know our petitioner is with us. Thank you.
Yes, so the petitioner is asking for a new sign. The proposal complies with the size and location for the signage according to the district guidelines. This is in 150 North College Avenue, is located within the Courthouse Square Historic District. So the new signage would be installed within the current space that held the previous sign. And there's also some stickers that would be placed on the windows, and those are also deemed, staff deemed them of appropriate and non-obtrusive scale. The materials that are being proposed, the acrylic, is not ideal. However, the staff found that it did not detract from the historic district. So here's some more information from the guidelines. The scale of the signage should be in proportion with the facade. Obscuring the historic building features is discouraged, so the sign doesn't do that. Use of materials such as wood, stone, iron, steel, glass, and aluminum is encouraged. So that's kind of where we're at. Sorry, this is the location of the sign and the building. And this is how the sign itself would look, with the peach cobbler factory fitting within that space. This photo has additional detail about the sticker decals that could be placed in the glass that is perpendicular to the street. And that's it. Does the petitioner have the samples?
The what?
Did you samples or?
I do. I have a sample of the acrylic letter. This is what it'll look like. That'll be the finish on it. It'll be white with black around, but you can see that it's has a wood-like appearance. The aluminum is twice as expensive so she mentioned cost may be a factor. The other thing, when I spoke with Gloria previously, she said the commission, as it relates to standardized businesses, likes to see it not be common with other franchises, for example. So we had this one designed specifically for the space. No other Peach Cobbler Factories has this sign. In fact, I'm going to pass this around. There's one for everyone who can just pass it. This is what the standard sign is. It's a traditional backlit, kind of plastic light, and it was deemed, we just didn't even want to do that for this space, so I didn't propose it. So, in as much as, is it the same font? Yes, but does it look like the other stores? No, it will not.
All right, thank you. So let's go to questions. Yeah, Daniel, have you any questions?
No, not right now.
Okay. Renard, do you have any questions?
Peach cobbler.
Yes, sir.
What is that?
So, it's a really great question. We also have banana puddings and cinnamon rolls that are
Okay,
flavored.
stop.
But peach cobbler is,
That's
it's a
fine.
pie without a crust around the
You
outside.
have my vote.
We'll fix this lockability.
We're good.
All right, fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, the picture, okay.
Thanks, Bernard, we needed that.
No questions.
I do aim to keep.
I have two questions. On one of the photos, it appeared that the apropos signage had already been removed. Is
It
that
has.
by photo effect, or is that real?
It's real, it's gone.
Okay. And then my second question is, did you get a quote for, did you attempt to get, or did you get a quote for the wood?
I've not got a quote for wood because our sign manufacturer is not able to facilitate that. Aluminum, I got a quote, but he doesn't have the stock for that, or his machine is late, or what. He gave me, the two options I have were acrylic and aluminum.
Well,
And my sign.
are you allowed to go
manufacturer's
outside of
dictated by
that?
corporate.
Are you, I mean, can you?
I theoretically could. I can ask corporate for a waiver. Again, I already had it for this, but right now, we only have one sign manufacturer for all the stores. And he's based out of Louisville, Kentucky, luckily for me.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Allison. Sam?
Are you planning on reusing the wood substrate, or are you gonna put on new?
No, we're using the existing. We're not removing anything. In
Mhm.
fact, the awning is there today. We are changing the color from the whatever blue it is to this gray
Mhm.
so that the letters pop better.
Gotcha.
But we are not removing anything.
Okay, thank you, that's it.
Thank you. Elizabeth? Any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Chris?
No.
No questions here. We move to comments. Daniel? Renard? Doug?
Mine would just be that, first off, I appreciate the difference that you went to change the sign, because I think this with the framed look and how you're doing it is much more compatible than the picture you gave us. And two, you see the acrylic lettering. I mean, we have aluminum or wood. When that acrylic lettering is up there, no one's going to notice if that's aluminum or wood. So I don't have a problem with the acrylic lettering.
Allison?
Yeah, I was gonna complain the fact that it's not wood, especially because, as you can see, the apropos one, I think was wood. It always looked like wood to me, gold painted. But thanks to Mr. Bruce, I think that I'm convinced that it would appear to be wood. Is that what you're saying? You think it would give?
Yeah, you can't touch it. It's up a few feet, and that material that he just passed around, you can't tell.
Feels like wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it probably won't, but it doesn't. I guess typically you see the letters like painted, and you can tell it's like painted wood. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So that's, I think that's part of the character. So I'm still kind of on the fence about this. Convince me, Sam.
Sam?
I've got no issues with this. I'll support it.
What is that?
Duncan? Yeah. Elizabeth? Any comments?
No comments.
Chris, any comments?
Yeah, I'd like ice cream with that.
Complimentary vanilla ice cream,
No problem.
sprinkled with cobbler magic. Please come in for a drink.
You have created a lot of buzz on Facebook. I'll say that. My friends are excited.
Good.
I really like what you're planning to do, so that's my comment for you on this project.
Thank you very much.
And I think that we need a motion
Motion to approve COA 22-74.
I'll second it.
All right, D,
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
John Saunders,
yes?
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes, absolutely.
Allison Chopra,
Does the petition?
Well, I want that special crumble on the top, so yes.
Okay. All right.
Allison Chopra,
I said yes, I said yes.
okay, Bernard Cross,
Yes.
motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I
I'll
didn't see
be
him.
in contact between tomorrow and Monday.
Say that again, sorry.
Thank you for your patience.
Oh, no
I'll be
worries.
sending you the certificate
Okay, perfect.
either
Thank you
tomorrow
very
or
much.
Monday.
I appreciate it. Appreciate everyone's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So let's move on to demolition delay. DD 2216, 1109 North College, contributing. And the petitioner's with us?
If the petitioner for the demolition delay of 1109 North College Avenue is here, can they please raise their hand using the raise hand feature on Zoom?
Okay. We don't have a petitioner, but we can move forward.
Yeah.
All right. So give your presentation to us.
So I'm gonna be very blunt here. I haven't had time to do justice to this property yet. My main request is for more time. A very preliminary look at the shard document showed that it has these 6/1 windows that are still intact. It has a lot of stonework, Bloomington limestone, stonework on the foundation and on the alleyway that runs between it and the neighboring building, which is a locally designated historic building. I just want to have a little bit more time to research this cottage, Craftsman's Cottage from 1930. It's just that something about all the materials and everything, and I really haven't been able to do more historic research as of now. And I really want to make sure I do as much due diligence with this property before determination is made. But that's just the staff recommendation. I leave it all to you.
Gloria, how much time do we have left on the petition?
The start date was September 6th.
Okay, so we have 90 days from that date?
That is correct.
Okay. So would we like to table this until our next meeting?
I would make that motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Great. Dee, would you take a roll call, please?
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Elizabeth Mitchell,
Yes,
Allison Chopra,
Yes.
Bernard Cross,
Yes.
All right, motion
motion
carries.
carried.
Thank you, Dee. All right, so we have under new business, 923 East University Street in the Elm Heights Historic District. Our petitioner is with us. So, Gloria?
Doug Bruce.
Yeah, Doug.
Yeah, so, this petitioner is really needing to find a way to make this house and the garage usable, and the existing garage is, this is, as I told Gloria, it's been before the commission a few times for different owners. And, I talked to the client and said, it's not going, you can't do full demolition of this garage. That obviously was the idea that they had wished to pursue. And I had wondered about, and again, it's kind of weird because at the last meeting, I have to leave the room when the discussion goes on, so I don't really know what the discussion was in the group. I have a good idea, but I don't know. But what I wanted to try to do is propose to the client that, can we keep the remaining, the existing facade at least facing the street? And again, this garage sits back from the street
100 and some feet. This isn't right up on the street. But I was trying to find a way, could we, again, do an addition to this and step it back to leave the existing garage as seen as primary, and then use a different material. Now, the different material, again, you look at, and Duncan, you introduced me to a book ages ago on the architecture of additions, and I know discussions over years have been the dialogue and the Secretary of Interior standards on differentiating what's new and what's old. And so I had proposed trying to step this back, still make a garage of the size of the existing garage. We can't go any smaller as far as width, or we really can't get anything in there. And try to use a different material. Now, the back wall of the existing garage would have to come off. It's already the wall that was deteriorating, as we talked about last time. Doesn't have a lot of foundation under it, or has been eroded away, and obviously opening up the wall between the additions. But I wanted to see, and I wanted to just bring these as a consultation with this group to say, what is it that we can do to make this work or not? And what your ideas are, and if you thought I was going down the right path with this. We also made the addition, I'll call the new mudroom, quite a bit smaller to connect. I mean, right now it's a detached garage, and they would really like, as they age, to be able to go from the house, from the garage into the house without stepping out of the weather. And again, there's reasons why I think this house has been before us so many times, because it doesn't work for anything other than really a lawnmower or a very small car, and that's not what we've seen here. So I just bring it forward to you as some sketches. I told the client that I was going to come before you on my own and see if there's something that we can make happen here. Now, I'll say something else that I did. I did the garage roof, and I, because again, I wanted to differentiate between this addition and what was existing. So I turned it as a gable, and I also hipped it. So this addition has a hip to kind of bring it back, so it doesn't seem like a big wall of roof. We kept the slope very shallow, so that we could have the primary existing garage and that gable, and again, the limestone piece would be repaired that's in it. This isn't a formal request, but we would again have the garage door type and all of this, but I wanted to see if this is going to be worth putting something together, or if it's just not. So I leave it with you I'd certainly take notes and take any comments you might have.
Does the homeowner want to use it as a garage when it's done?
Yes. Yes, right now, they park in the driveway, and he has a truck. So.
And it's a garage for one car? That's what they need?
So I think it's his daughter or somebody, if they would be able to get his truck in the new garage, and then with the car, if the existing garage gets lengthened, then they can fit the other car in it.
It's taking up
the plan view up again, Gloria.
Sorry. Give me 1 second.
So, a typical parking space is 9 by 18. The smallest garage I draw on homes now is usually 21 or 22 feet at a minimum. And usually we want to try to do 24. 20 will just work for this.
And the interior wall comes out between the two.
Yeah, it would really have to at a 12'6" width.
Can I ask a quick historical question? If anybody remembers, or Gloria, if you know. I remember this being in front of us. What was the major issue? Just that
the original proposal called for
complete demolition,
demolition and replace.
Yes, with a very similar but slightly larger structure.
I understand. Thank you.
What materials would you use for the new?
Well, so that was again another idea, was to try to differentiate this addition from what was original, but the house is all brick. So the existing garage is brick, and then I was proposing using a cement board or something on this. Because again, I don't want to get into cement board panels, which starts to change the character, and, you know, trying to match the brick and make the garage look, I mean, and we could, if this commission said, hey, we want to see brick, I mean, we got in dialogues for weeks on the Von Lee about matching the existing gas-fired brick, and I still think the addition should be something different, something of a different material.
So how close is this to the property line?
It's, they had a letter of support from their neighbor, so yeah, it's gonna get a little closer, but it's certainly, their neighbor is in support of it.
I'm sorry, what was the answer?
I think one of the earlier drawings showed it, I don't know, again.
It's like an 80-foot lot.
Yeah, it's a big lot,
Yeah.
and the neighbor didn't have a problem with it initially, and the garage was wider.
30 or 40 feet, so it's, yeah, so that's like 15 feet, and this house is way over here. Their lot is basically right up to the side of that house.
Okay.
So you're thinking about like a lap siding with cement, or?
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I looked at, do I do a brick base? Do I reuse the brick that we can and do it on the front facade of this? But it just seemed to step it back and use a different material, kind of gave way to the existing facade and changing the roof as well.
Does the old garage have a door on it currently?
Yeah.
Is that redeemable?
It's not in good shape. I mean, it's not. Now, we would look for doors that would match that. I mean, if we brought it back with something, it would have a door type, and this is what we would use, so. But it's got a lot of rot in it. Any garage door right now, even new doors are, you know, hard to get. There's a wait for,
Doors.
yeah.
I don't have any issues with what I see. Should think about a Louvre glass with, just kidding.
Well, and you know, again, we would probably put a couple of windows in the wall, in the new garage wall facing the house, but I just really didn't want to go down to all that detail right now until I found out if this was something that you know, you could support as
What
a
kind of
roof.
roofs on the original garage? What
Shingles.
kind of roof? And
It'd be a
it's
shingle
shingles.
roof, yeah.
So where you take that wall out, you just run a I-beam or some kind of header through there to land the current gable roof on?
Yeah, we'd have a column in there somewhere. I again, the back wall has to come out. I mean, it's just in bad shape, and you know, they may sell if they can't do this, and we may see this down the road because somebody's gonna have to do something to the back wall. But because I looked at trying to leave, I'll walk up here, it's probably gonna be easier. You know, I looked at trying to leave, you know, something here and maybe even pull this here and pull this in a little bit, and that still may happen too, just so that our beam is shorter, because we don't have a lot of height. So I don't want a deep beam that you've got to duck under. And if you've met the client, he's tall.
And you could put a post in there.
Yeah, we could put a post in there.
The back wall, when you replace it on the original garage, would it be brick? Is it brick?
Yeah, it's brick. It's got some cracks in it and things. And so again, and this is brick. And I think it's brick here and brick here, then this is not.
So what the material for the new wall that
Would
you're
be
proposing?
cement board here all the way around, especially because you can't see, this is not visible from a public way. This is facing the neighbor. But this is, because I thought about reusing some brick here, but again, it would make it look like it was original, and I really didn't want to do that.
When you try to make it look, so the whole point is it's a historic home, and then you're adding something to it that isn't historical. I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So I think it changes the idea that this is a historic home.
Yeah, the compatible but
Sure,
differentiated
yeah,
is what
yeah.
they're looking for when they do an addition to an historic house.
Because part of the theory is you don't want to trick people into thinking that it was always like that.
Right,
In,
right,
in
yeah.
5 years, I don't want them to
absolutely.
look at it, but again, there's arguments both ways. Do you want to
Yeah.
look at it, you want it to be compatible, but you want to look at it and see what was the original historic fabric.
Well, of course, originally it was built in an era when you had small garages and
Had a
nobody
buggy
needed
that you
to.
probably pushed in there.
Yeah, right.
Well, and that's part of what we're
the
trying to
bump out.
preserve, is that feeling. So I
Right.
think this does that, because you've left the front and the original width in place. You have taken out almost half of the original building.
But we don't, yeah, unfortunately, we don't have purview over that, but we don't, because we can't see it.
But you do in a way because the project like either gets disapproved for,
Yeah.
I mean,
But yeah,
we think wider than that,
It's
you know,
true.
yeah.
it's true. But yeah, I am pained to see that the back half of this is going away. I totally understand why.
Yeah.
But from the street, it works.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate, like, turning the slope of the roof really subjugates the addition to the original one. You still read that this is a tiny little garage, and God, I want a bigger garage, so there you go. And there's only two things I'd like to pay some attention to, is how that stud wall meets the brick wall, even though we're not gonna see it. You know,
At the intersection
At the
of
interse-
the
yeah,
addition,
yeah.
this.
I'd love to see, well, that there,
And at the
but
back.
also at the back, I'd love to see a little something, a little notch
At
or
the
something
back.
happen at the back where, you know, one wall, so it's not just a flush thing, but that's, you know. And then the other piece of this that I would love to see is, I love they probably hate them, but those skinny little track driveways and how that gets worked out. Because it's gonna be hard, right? Because you've
Yeah.
got to curve over to that next one.
Yeah.
So I think if there's anything to wrangle about, for me, that's it.
Ooh, hey. I got it.
One more thing, that's the garage door number,
Here's the thing.
right?
What's this?
The garage door on that addition, that's not exact.
Well, we will try to match the historic door that's there now, and both of them, because they'll both be new, they'll have to be replaced. But we'll have that in our, again, this isn't the formal, let's
Gotcha.
approve it, but yeah, that would be something we'd certainly, without a doubt, work on.
So I guess my other comment is, there are ways to assure compatibility and distinction without necessarily changing the wall material. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if the garage door is wider, if the roof pitch is changed, and it's got a new door on it, even if the doors were differentiated, which I don't think I would personally want to do, I'd probably want them to match.
Yeah.
It wouldn't necessarily have to be, I mean, the measure of compatibility is really subtle, because it's always, I mean, and actually in our ordinance, for those of you who haven't read it, there's a whole section on issues of compatibility. There's a list of 10 or 12 or 14 things to look at when you evaluate compatibility. So the idea is, ultimately, the idea is that you could differentiate the new from the old. And then the question in the theory classes comes up, like, well, who could differentiate? Like the expert who knows about brick, or the layman who wouldn't notice anyway, maybe, that one was new and one was old. And so that's always, at every project, you sort of bring that to bear, like, okay, how, like Allison was saying, how important is the historic structure and its integrity relative to the distinction of differentiating the garage? So let's say you differentiated the garage, you put on 5 or 6 inch wide horizontal siding, and you painted it the wrong color. It would be much more visible to everybody in the neighborhood than the fact that you changed the siding. And if you used a brick that was subtly pinker or subtly more yellow or compatible but not the same, you would have still have achieved the distinction that so-called expert would notice from the street even, you know.
Well,
So
and
you or
that's-
I driving by this in 20 years would look over there and they go, oh, look, they added onto their garage. But it doesn't negatively detract from the whole ensemble. And that's where the compatibility of the differentiation, I think, gets difficult. Because now it's still, if you will, a taste decision and an aesthetic decision and, you know, a design decision. And that's why it's always never the same thing, you know? It's like when we have discussions in here about what's gonna get demolished and what isn't. I was recently accused of approving one and not approving the other. Well, the person who said that didn't realize the subtlety of the distinctions of the projects. Well, that's not my problem. But you know, there's more to it than just being distinctive. So I think in this case, I would look for subtle distinction. And the fact that you've changed the roof is, for me, is enough.
So brick.
Well, I would at least brick the front of it.
Yeah, okay. And that, again,
But that's just, you know,
Yeah.
again, talk to other people.
Yeah,
But I'm just saying
yeah.
that the subtlety of the distinction, like if you look at this, I really don't like the horizontal siding because it changes the feel of everything in the house. If you look at that really steep roof and the accentuated forward peaks and, you know, that old Gothic revival thing and the garage's imitation of it, you know, you don't really you wanna mess with that as little as possible in terms of material differentiation. So I would be inclined to reuse the existing brick that you have left over to at least do the front
Or go as far around the corner.
of the garage and turn the corner, yeah.
Yeah.
And the rest of it could be
Well, and I
poured
can turn it and
concrete.
stop it at a window place where I can make a good break, but no, and that's, again, I struggled with that because the other part is this house is just so beautiful. It's just, and it's all brick, and my worry is that because we're starting now, you know, this house has a very vertical sense because of the steep roof pitch. And so even this garage is way back, so this elevation doesn't really do it justice because, but I was worried that we're adding on at a horizontal level when the house is very vertical. So I was trying to make the garage disappear as much as possible, but I also agree with you in the material of brick, it just could be a brick that maybe doesn't, or, well, this brings up a point, Duncan. I mean, if this is so, wow, I walked here and I almost tripped on the thing earlier, now I'm like, okay, I didn't hit it. This is so vertical, my worry was this was getting horizontal, and so stepping that back, again, this doesn't show you the fact that this house is here and the garage is back here, and then this is back a little further. Now, I don't have any problem putting brick here, but I'm worried about that brick starting to kind of flow too much horizontally.
Yeah, but I think, I'll pick up on something Duncan said, that introducing a new material or jarringly different material is gonna make that thing pop out a whole lot more. And if you can get even close to the color of the brick or even use the existing brick, then it's gonna fade, which I think is the point.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah, go ahead, Allison. It's free for all right now.
Okay, so I like the sort of, it is limestone around the arched doorway, correct? That sort
I
of,
believe so, yeah.
that design of it where it's kind of, if you maybe could implement that into somewhere, I think that would be a nice little tie-in.
About the garage door of the existing house, is that not limestone?
Yeah,
Oh, it
yeah,
is?
it's got a big crack in the
Okay,
middle of
I
it,
get
it's failed.
So you'll have to.
That's gotta be
deal with
Oh, so
that.
there's
Yeah.
already is on the,
So
on
you
the
can-
existing.
yeah, so you
I
can
can't
carry
see
that
that from the
over.
photos, but.
I can actually show everybody if you want to.
It's on Zillow.
It's.
I have it up on Zillow if you're looking for it.
Sam's helping me. My computer died at court today. We're working too hard.
Okay,
It died.
I see Chris has his hand up. Did you want to talk, Chris?
I had a comment.
All right, let's hear it.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, as a builder, I was just thinking I want to reuse those brick. You know, I've hunted for matching brick or similar brick, and there's gonna be a lot of leftover brick, and I totally agree that with Duncan on, use that brick, and you'll see the differentiation. But you'll have a really subtle addition that way. Even just on the front is really all you need, and enough around the corner to hold it up.
Okay.
So that's my comment.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris. You can put your hand down now.
Yeah, right.
And I had a random suggestion, and I don't know what
Yeah, go ahead,
anybody
Gloria.
thinks. It just occurred to me, if you use the same brick, you could change the bond type,
Good.
the patterning.
Yeah, you can change your bonding.
What do you mean?
So right now, the bricks are just one after the other, so a running bond. You could do
Something
like a
creative.
Flemish or
Yeah.
something like that.
I would even want to see it.
I would do that.
See the
Yeah.
brick on the back corner where you're at the deck. Because
Yeah,
I can't imagine bringing horizontal siding around that back corner and having the deck face
Just
a
tooth
brick,
it in.
a brick and a.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd just
Keep
extend.
taking it
If
down.
you've got
If
enough
we-
brick,
yeah.
that would be awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know that in these pictures, there's lots of foliage, but I wonder how much of the garage you can see when there's not.
Not, well,
Find
it's
out
actually.
in a month.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
I drove by there earlier today, and it's like, all the stuff on, Google Maps, it's like, you can't see it from
You
the
can't
streets.
see it all.
But you can now,
Yeah.
so that's all the.
So looking at this middle picture at the top, I mean, the first thing you do when you evaluate compatibility is you do an evaluation of the existing structure, right? So what is it about the existing garage that makes it distinctive and willing to, or you know, that mandates us keeping it, you know? And so it's the proportions of it, obviously, which you've pretty much imitated. You made it a little longer, but you've got the front proportion, wall proportion, about, you know, the height proportion.
Yeah, yeah.
And obviously the remarkable header, which, you know, is the most distinctive quality about the
Yeah.
front of it.
It is, yeah.
And so, you know, I mean, the location of the light, some of that stuff, you know, and then the door, you know, those are the things that really make it distinctive. And so
Yeah.
if you were gonna restore that building, those are the things that you would have to pay attention to make sure we're all in
Well, the
place.
details too, like the gable there on the front of this is not
Right,
a
the over-
12-inch
the overhang.
overhang.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But all that stuff is, to the extent that you can imitate that in the new structure,
Yeah.
you gain compatibility, and the other elements will give you distinction, you know. And distinction can be
Elizabeth Lee?
really subtle.
Yeah.
And it looks like the eave just corbels out a couple of courses,
Yeah.
and so you really don't have an overhang.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so those are things we're mimicking on the addition, yeah.
Anyway,
Okay,
yeah, I mean, it's painful to see the whole back half of it go away, but this works.
okay,
Yeah, and it's in the back.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, I appreciate the comments and the time, and I'll talk to the client and try to get some stuff together for him. So, you'll see us back.
All right, thanks, Doug.
Well, thank you.
We don't have anything in our old business, but we do have Gloria, you have things you gotta bring up, yeah.
Yes.
Two things.
Well, there's a few things that I did.
What is
Things,
this?
all good things, but give me 1 second while I figure this out. Why is my sharing capable?
Why don't I go ahead and just offer what I have, just real quick. I just want to let everybody know that the Smokestack demolition and restoration is complete. So, as of yesterday.
Stubby's there.
What's that?
Stubby.
Yeah. It's been reduced and restored, and everything's done. So they demobilized yesterday from there. And then the October 13th meeting, we'll have, Gloria and I are both going to be out of town, so we're going to talk about who's going to cover the October 13th meeting. So, anyway.
October 23rd?
October 13th.
October 13th, that's our next meeting.
So
Okay.
we'll stay in touch with you about that.
Yeah, no, it will happen. It will be covered. If I need to zoom in from a distance, I'll figure it out. So there's a few things that are happening. I wanted to announce now that Daniel Schlegel's still here. I think Liz may have left, but as of a few weeks
She's
ago.
here.
Oh, she's here?
Yeah.
Liz, are you
Yes,
still
I'm
here?
here.
Excellent.
I'm here.
So I just wanted to share with everybody that Elizabeth Mitchell, Daniel Schlegel, and I have been working on the Historic Preservation Fund grant application. This is a pretty big grant to hire somebody, probably an Indiana University student or somebody or a team of graduate students or professors or other academics to help us update the West Side Historic District nomination form for the National Register as a way of recognizing additional African American spaces that it just needs to be updated for various reasons. The original West Side West Side District is the biggest district in Bloomington. It contains a diversity of building types and so many histories in it. And it was a magnificent work when it came into being in 1996. And so we're just giving it a boost 25 years later. And in that, we also want to update the African American walking tour, so bundling them both together as Bloomington's African American historic building resources or assets. So we're working on this for the state, the deadline's looming, so we've been sort of crunching a lot and being very busy, but wanted to let you know that something very nice and lovely is taking place right now. There's a lot of other things. John, this is a bit of an announcement for you too, but I'm also working on ideas for next year and the year after, things that have come up today for May Preservation Month. For next year, I have an idea of basing it on Eileen Dunges, the local modernist architect, female architect, who built some really interesting buildings. So that's just something that's in a rudimentary rough draft, but I have some good ideas. And IU Cinema is looking for ideas on movie series for 2023, 2024, and a historic preservation series for May 2024 could be very nice. So I'm already in talks with them. It would be 3 movies. I was thinking 2 documentaries and something fun like Back to the Future, and bringing somebody in to give a talk about the difference between movies and real world historic preservation, because oftentimes people get their perceptions from movies and not from what's happening next door. Anyways, those were just some cute announcements. So I am going to be doing my continuing education in the American Folklore Society meeting in Oklahoma in a few weeks. That's why I will not be here physically. However, I have not forgotten about the rest of you. Duncan, I have been emailing you. I've also been talking to Mark DeLassy and a couple of other people. Mark DeLassy has 4 presentations he already has prepared, because we don't have that much time in 2022 to get everybody's continuing education up to date. I wanted to start getting ideas of a topic that would be of interest for everybody, and if any of these 4 topics would be of interest for a majority of the commissioners, that would make things a little bit simpler. But if there is something that is not included here, I thought it would be a good space, a public open space, to bring an idea up. Yes?
I think the Windows one sounds most interesting.
What's that?
The windows.
I agree, I'd like to do the windows, the importance of the
2 for
windows.
windows.
2 for windows. I don't know.
I'm 20th century.
I vote infill.
Chris infill.
Infill.
Yeah, that'd be my vote too. Infill.
Yeah, infill's interesting, although the windows is, it's always an
Sounds
issue.
very
Yeah.
niche, you know.
Okay. Well,
Buy some people with these
in the end,
jobs.
it's probably going to be 1 presentation, perhaps 2 if we can fill it in. I still need to coordinate a date, a place, a time, and talk to Mark to see when he can come. And we need each year a majority of commissioners to have their continuing education, so not all 9 commissioners require it each year, but a majority. And it's been happening in various ways, but yes.
I obviously need some education, so I'll nominate myself as one of the 9. But I was also going to mention, if he's from out of town,
Indianapolis.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I think infill construction would be like really interesting for the general public. So if he was able to do like a couple talks, I don't know, from a different department or something, like RDC or something would be interested in like hosting that would be, I mean, if that way we could get both. It's just a thought, especially because I do think that we have quite a bit of infill construction going on here in our town. I think people would be interested in that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a thought.
Good point.
Okay, and next week, Bernard, you can confirm, next week is the camp conference. So are you still going? Okay, so we do have one commissioner who will be going up to
Fun, South Bend.
South Bend, Indiana to, are you
Good
going?
name.
Yes,
I'm gonna be there.
but you're going in the name of Monroe County.
It's my free ride.
So, yes, so we do have people going to South Bend, and I hope to hear something fun about camp afterwards. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be excellent. Anyways, so thank you so much for bearing with me. Was there anything else from our side of things?
No, not from mine.
Great. Do we have any commissioner comments? Sam?
I would really like for us to follow up on the straw poll for the Cottage Grove Historic District. So if there is something that I can do to help with that, let me know. Because I think this is when it needs to happen. We can use the example of that full demo building to say, this is happening. This will continue to happen. Do you care? So, and it's sending out, what, 30, 40, 50 postcards?
Okay.
Just send me an email or something.
I was gonna say, I should send you an email tomorrow to figure out some of the logistics, because is it gonna be using the interim report proposed district, or would it be to the neighborhood of Cottage Grove? So, yeah, just.
It's like, how wide do we cast the
Yeah.
net?
Right.
What would the parameter, we can chat.
Yeah.
Tomorrow if you want, or next week, you tell me what works best for you.
Let's shoot for next week. Tomorrow's crazy.
Sounds good.
It's ready. Okay.
So Saturday in Washington, Indiana, Indiana Barn Foundation's fall tour. 6 barns, including the preeminent round barn in Indiana, the Singleton Barn, are on this tour. If you have a free Saturday, I think it's from 10 to 4, self-driving, self-guided. You can buy tickets at the site. And let's see, how would you find out where it is? indianabarns.org. If anybody's interested.
Yeah, I'm interested.
They're nice events. I mean, there's food trucks and other ancillary stuff going on. Supposed to be a nice day. So, I think it's $20 a ticket.
Okay. Do we have any public comments?
If anybody in the public online has comments, can they please use the raise hand feature?
Okay, we're adjourned.